Hi, everybody. Welcome back to
Hi,
Still Podcast. I am Sierra, and this is.
Brand.
We're going to be doing a continuation of our discussion about bigotry. So, last episode, I think we had left it on this claim. Let me read it to you one more time. From a moral standpoint, is it negligent to allow someone to remain unchallenged in their bigoted beliefs? Actually,
And
I think it's slightly different than what we had put out a couple episodes ago because that 3 hour talk that Brandon and I had, we decided to change up the phraseology a little bit. And I think that actually captures what we're trying to say. And so we're going to dive in. We're going to recap that 3 hour conversation. We're going to give you the highlight reels and talk about how that whole thing went. And then we will go from there and do a continuum of that line of thought around bigotry.
yeah, and I mean, I know Sierra gave you guys like a little bit of touch base, but that 3 hour call or talk, I feel like our roundtable was very enlightening. And you guys have seen us talk and have conversations before where we literally, I feel like this season alone has been just like, these are some buttons on a new switchboard that we didn't really know about each other. But they haven't. I don't mean you would think these have been hot button issues, but I don't think we ever have a hot button on our table. I mean, I feel like they're just areas of interest and areas of exposure and not indifference, but areas of like, hey, this is a new forest of view. Cool, let's walk it. Instead of it being like this is the dark forest, no one goes there. We literally try to keep the sunlight in all of it. Like we haven't just like, oh, this is the dark one, don't go there. Like we're off limits. So I felt like that's what this was. And I will say this, I was enlightened, pleasantly surprised, but also profoundly changed in some of the thoughts that I had just blindly carried.
Oh
You
yeah.
know?
And that makes a call back to gosh, it was during when we first started doing StreamYard and we were doing the friendship arc. The friendship arc. Talking like it's an anime. We were asking each other questions. And you asked me, what's a belief that you used to hold that you don't now? Or something like
Mm,
it was very much
yeah.
it was like
It was,
I didn't realize that I held this belief until someone kind of directly confronted the line of thinking years later. And then I was like, oh, I have some old opinions that need to get unpacked. Kind of like, do I even believe that anymore? Well, what was I just about to say? Do I even believe what I'm just about to say? Like that's 100%
and
what happened.
yeah, and I feel like even to that point, like how you said, okay, you had to get like a re-app, a recharge, a reset. Like, let me double check. Let me make sure. In my case, it was more like take your ass to the library. It wasn't like I already had this wrong definition. It was more like I just had a sentence and I've just been defining sentences and dressing it up like it's been a definition this whole time. When I literally was like, oh yeah, I saw a quote. Saw a quote. It's on a T-shirt. That's what I did. This is a T-shirt. This is T-shirt teaching. So I think it's really important, especially around this topic and around this season of community, that these types of self and group relations are brought to the table, witnessed, and even kind of challenged. And I actually call to action to all of our listeners and be like, look, books are still cool. Knowledge is still power, but actual knowledge is the real power, not circumstantial or opinionated. I feel like we have a lot more access to stuff, whether it's really substantial or legitimate or even like rooted in its actual like purpose. And I think when Sierra talks about like the definitions of words, the origin, not even the definition, the origin of a word,
Mm-hmm.
and how that definition can be mutated or infected or poisoned leads to how we as a society, social construct, and even community change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the big buzzwords that we found were bigotry, racism, prejudice. And then we found so many topics. I don't think you can have any conversation around those three buzzwords without being like, it can be in anything. It's like bigotry tastes like chicken because it's in everything.
Right. I think the thing that so when we got together to do that 3 hour conversation, before that, somehow I got sent down this crazy spiral around the word racism because I was trying to think of like I knew this talk was coming, and so I was like, how do I unpack this with him? How do I even go about it? And I was like, okay, what are bigoted beliefs? What's an example? And so racism came up. Um, the word prejudice came up. Prejudice is in like every definition of a bigoted view ever. So you have to like kind of define that word. It's funny how all those kind of like cross over. And then there were some other ones, but I got stuck on racism because I realized, whoever does this for a living and studies this professionally, as far as like the origins of words and where they came from and how they changed and the definition, like whoever does that for real, fact check me. But just like based off what I saw, it sort of looked like the word racism had popped up almost out of nowhere, almost like how slang pops up. Everyone knows this Gen Alpha slang with like the skibbity and the Ohio and all the bullshit right now. This, so racist or the French, if I believe it's this way, but like the French word would be like racist with an E at the end. That would be the original use of the word. It was a French word. And then sort of looked like Americans adopted it in like early 1910s. And then it was just used once in like a book or something. And then after that, it kind of blew up in academia in the 30s, 20s, 30s. And from there, it just went viral, so to speak, and it became a staple part of our language. But before, use this loosely, before 1900, it doesn't seem like it was written anywhere in the American language. And I'm not going to say that that's a fact, but just based off of my understanding, it seemed to really pick up speed in the 1920s-ish. So if we're going to look at the original intent of the word racist, it seemed like it was actually completely neutral. It was not about anti one thing or anti another. It was just racism or racist is difference in treatment based off of race. It didn't have to be negative treatment. It could be positive treatment. It could be any treatment about any race. And that's definitely not how society uses this word now. And so when I told Brandon this, he was like it just knocked everything off. And we kind of went on a rabbit hole, and then that's what started this whole 3 hour conversation. And we both were like, wow, okay, so the importance of understanding the origins of words and defining them and having at least a grasp on that history, right, helps us understand the bigger picture. Because when we use words, obviously, like we think we use them right, but sometimes we might not be. And so then we can be talking past each other or talking in circles, and it's like we got to get on the same page. And so that was the first thing we did, is we were like, okay, we can't even dive into this claim unless we're going to understand the origins of the words, how they've changed like from then to now, how they're used, like the context in society, different cultures, and then how they used to be defined, how they're defined now, how that kind of goes together. And then the thing that we landed on next was critical thinking, because that's what we found ourselves doing. We were critically thinking. And I don't know if
challenged to critically think, because I think so much of us now just go with our immediate buzz response, or our immediate like, well, I heard, or I saw, instead of said I looked up, or I researched, and or I paused, researched, then or I stopped myself. I admit it, like, actually, I truly don't know the origin of this thought process, so I'm not going to feel confident to facilitate an opinion or even my viewpoint, because I don't feel like I'm going to bring enough fairness and critical thinking to whatever discussion and outcome is expected to have, that I would want to have if it was me presenting such a thing. So, yeah, I think critical thinking and critical awareness, and just like standing in the fact of saying, okay, if you want to be an advocate around a true definition of dialogue and the true outcome that is going to be not full of circumstantial or just fluff, you it's a challenge for yourself, saying, are you gonna do your homework? And there is homework that you can be done in Google or AI, or I mean, hell, we all have these devices that can do tons of shit. So why not just look up a keyword to make sure you know what the hell you're talking about?
Right. So we talked about how we feel like a common thread is there's been a decrease. It's not a total collapse per se, but it's just a decrease in critical thinking, and especially in groups or communities, as we want to call them, whatever we're going to use that, whatever term we're going to use here to define and describe a group of people. Because groupthink is a thing. Groupthink, when one person is popular, has an idea, and everyone else just kind of like, yeah, like that's a concept. And so
isn't it funny? Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think it's funny that once upon a time that was considered a great thing. Like, it takes one great mind to start a revolution. Well, it also takes one great mind to create ridiculousness. And this is also the thing that I think also has been happening. We're seeing a lot more ridiculousness versus revolutionary thinking.
Right. So I think a lot of these things we come up against that are like hot button, or they're prickly issues in society.
Taboo.
Yeah. If you push them just a little bit with logic, oftentimes it doesn't hold up very well under pressure. And so the problem with groupthink is the pressure never gets applied. But that's the cool thing about free speech.
Ooh.
So anyway, that's a different tangent. But what we almost got to that in the 3-hour conversation. Almost. I was like, dude,
we did. I think like towards the end, after I was mentally fatigued of all the critical thinking, course rants that I went through that day, I was like, we are about to take on this mound. Okay, I need to tie my shoes, get a water, and have a snack, because we're about to go into this one. But I think it's really important. I mean, I guess I can also talk about, from my experience, even in that dialogue, how we both were just like, I am mad. I am devastated. I am just aware, and the level of awareness that came with that time, and I would even also say respect and space and candor between two two percentages of the same path, but like someone had more weight into that percentage of how much they knew and how much they gained. And it was actually a journey of them actually doing the homework and critical thinking through it. So it was not up to me just to sit there and live in whatever, I don't want to say, I don't go into like a psychologist, but like whatever my ego and my emotional response to me not knowing, instead of just being like, oh, look, okay, I'm going to truly sit in the comprehension of what this person is saying, because they are coming from very factual places, not just like, well, I felt in my life and da-da-da. It's like, well, those things are great, but like even now, just in this very same moment, I looked up the same word we just talked about in French, just to make sure I had my own journey through the definition of what she just explained to me. Not saying she was wrong, not saying anything, but I was like, oh, and then I saw stylish, elegant, or having the qualities of its race. And I was like, same thing.
Oh, okay. That could be another. Yeah, sometimes words have multiple definitions, so that's not interesting at all. So that could be a whole other, especially because it's coming from a different. I was gonna say culture, but I think it's a little bit more than culture at that point. But maybe you could argue, depending on like when it came to be, that it was probably I think culture is the right word to say. Yeah, because time and history matters too, which is like thinking about all this stuff. But yeah.
Hey, we should have a linguist reach out to us. Any linguists that are listening to our show, please reach out to us, because we love the power of words and language, but language specifically because that's what linguists study, language, not necessarily words, but tomato.
That would be very, very cool. If someone could like reach out and be like, hey, this is the actual hit. Like, dude, I want to know, because I'm just kind of poking around in the dark here. But yeah, so anyway, after we hit critical thinking, then it was like, okay, if critical thinking is happening or is not happening, what's creating the divide here? Because the other thing that we've noticed is like the emotionality and the tone of these conversations. If you get met with beliefs that contradict your own, or if you get met with information that you have up until this point had been told was wrong, or whatever the case is, a lot of times I think what happens is people get just too bogged down in their own emotions to be able to have a dialogue, and that's
Mm.
counterproductive. Because if you want to, well, and this is the bias that I have, but I want to walk through the world, and I want to be as close to the truth at all times. So that means if I don't know about something, I'm always going to err on the side of I don't know rather than stating an opinion or stating anything until I can get educated enough to have an opinion on something, right?
Yeah.
Everyone operates that way though. That's so that might not be priority number one for everybody. I understand that, but for me, I want to walk through the world in as truthful a way as I can. And so I don't have a problem having these hard conversations and trying to stay neutral and keep it level, keep it cool. But people who don't prioritize that, or people just who, well, I'm not gonna like, it's not a blame game right now, right? But the fact of the matter is, people do get heated, and people do have this inability right now, especially in like younger generations. Everything's a personal attack, and there's this there's a big discussion in the realm of free speech around whether or not speech can be equivalent to violence. And that's a big discussion. That's where we were headed in that end of that,
Mm. Mm-hmm,
which
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
put a tampon for right now, because that's a lot. But that's the
But
idea.
I will give one thing though. I agree with you only because, you know, since we don't really use our words as much anymore in such a digital space and such where we like why this show exists is because we want people to start using their actual voices and the words behind their voices, which is tone and conjecture. Yes, these are now truly powerful tools and weapons. They can be tools of change or tools of terror. And I think this is the part where people really need to understand that when you start using your voice and the words that come out of your mouth and at the direction they give them, that is a much more powerful or dangerous thing that you have now. Because we're so used to just doing this. This has
Yeah.
no context.
Yeah. It has no context. There's also not a whole, if you're anonymous too, there's that aspect to it. There's not a whole lot of accountability. There's like that false security. And so that definitely plays in, I think, to the emotionality of all this, people being able to have this discourse. And then at the very end, we were like, okay, so after we've gone through, we've defined terms, we've gotten a good understanding of where they came from, we've talked about how context over time has changed and how people may or may not be able to even have these discussions, what the issues are. We landed on, at the end of the day, I think there's still some people who are evidence deniers. Like people, and that, I think that's the essence, the true word or the true meaning of the word bigotry is when we've gone through all of this and people have presented reasonable evidence and you still want to hold the belief that you have. And it's like at that point, I think that's bigoted behavior. And I think truly bigoted behavior deserves to be challenged. And that brings us right back to the claim of, from a moral standpoint, is it negligent to allow someone to remain unchallenged in their bigoted beliefs? And I think that's important because we're not coming out here trying to say like we have to change their mind in any one direction, but like, should we just allow people to be unchallenged, period? Like, never at all. Like, should they just be allowed to sit with that? I don't know. I think if they can have a bigoted belief, you deserve to be challenged because the higher confidence you have, that means you should be able to back it up. And if you can't back it up, maybe you shouldn't be so confident. And so I think that challenge is warranted. Let's put it that way.
And I also, okay, I think not even the level of confidence, but the level of facade, like the level of facade that some of us have around their like, I'm right and you're wrong because I have a Facebook account. Like, okay, great for you. Or I have, it's not so much more like my dad told me, it's more like we all have access to true and unwavering knowledge, and we are still just facading and lacing and parroting, because we talked about this too, parroting our way through keywords and fast words and buzzwords and social constructs that connect us all together instead of create these, call people out to the curtain words. Like, is that true? Do you know what you're talking about? Like, it's like Is that like because we do it to each other, and I am guilty. Sierra is quite the swordsman when it comes to the fencing of my foul mouth and my bad words and my bad use of them. And I appreciate her every day and every time that she does it. I've actually become much more aware of how badly I use words together, and even in a structural sense, written and spoken. But it is important that I don't take it like, oh my gosh, she's calling me stupid, or she's saying, Brandon, you need to understand how to speak. It was more like, what I thought was cool was crazy, and it's okay to um, be challenged in a way that is going to make you a more comprehensible communicator and conversationalist, I think. I mean, and it doesn't take that much time. I think we make so much weight around taking the time. That's what it is. Like, take the time to legit stand in a truthful statement.
Mm.
We're so used to following the leader or following the trend or following the repetitiveness, the dark psychology around people's philosophies and things like that, because everyone's an Instagram this and everyone's on a platform. The public figure platform is now so oversaturated that who is saying what and who's valid? They all want to feel valid, but like this is where this whole thing, what we talked about, turns into a complete circus.
Well, that's interesting. You mentioned that. I think what kind of underpins all of that is the idea of subjectivity. Subjectivity,
Mm, mm,
subjectivity.
mm.
We
Yeah,
definitely we hit on that 2 episodes ago. We're talking about
we
objective
did.
and stuff like
Uh-huh.
that. Well, here's
Hmm.
something interesting. So, for the viewers, this might be a little bit difficult, but I'm going to talk directly to Brandon for a second. Because you know me, you know how I am, you know how I operate. So
Yes.
one of Rob's friends, he's a military buddy, and I would say he's like very much one and the same with me as far as like views, how he thinks, how he goes about life. He's very intense and like you know what I mean. Like we're cut from the same cloth, him and I. And
Yeah.
so we were together on all three of us were together on a Saturday, and I decided to pose this guy this question, the moral question.
Yeah.
And now back to the viewers. This is the funny part. So when I asked him, from a moral standpoint, is it negligent to allow someone to remain unchallenged in their bigoted beliefs? He didn't even take issue with like the latter half of that statement. He took issue with the word moral. And he wanted to, or the direction that he went at least was, well, morals based off of who or what? And the conversation, like, after very
Oh.
between you and me, between me and my husband, me and like anybody else that I talked to, he went straight to the crux of it, which is the fundamental fork in the road of are you going to take the subjective point or are you going to take the objective point? Because you can't answer this question without picking a lane, unfortunately. And so I can't tell. I don't know if he like got to the bottom of it, if he hit that right nerve, or if he got lost in the woods. I don't know, but he started to. I say argue. I only say argue because I was sort of playing devil's advocate, doing the opposite of whatever he was saying. So arguing in a good faith sense that
Yeah.
uh, morals come from lots of different places, and how one person defines a moral or says morals from somewhere is different than how another will be. And so, based off of that, the claim is sort of like, do you have something to say about
Ah,
that?
but do they like come on, like I okay, all right, this is where I gotta draw the line in the sand because this is the exact same shit that we are talking about right now. Who the hell? Okay, see, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna look up the word moral because who is gonna butter this biscuit? Like seriously, we just talked about saying moral. Like it's a which moral are you talking about? I don't know. The only word, the only like moral, like not your moral. It's moral. It
Well,
shouldn't be allowed to be. Okay, it's
here, go ahead. Sorry.
okay. Hmm. Concerned with the principle or of right and wrong behavior and the goodness or badness of a human character. So guess what? In that definition, there is no moral. It literally tells right there. It's the principles of good or bad. So moral is good morals and bad morals. That's it. It's not like John's morals versus Jenny's morals. It's like, nope, sorry, principles of Eve. It's like, sorry, kid.
So and well, so to briefly rewind, I think I've said this before in the podcast. This is why I think a lot of things fundamentally boil down to something religious in nature. It's because of this.
Oh,
So, but well, because where do morals?
so much.
And this, I don't think he was trying to say one individual's morals based off another. It's like people draw morals from somewhere, and there's like groups of morals, right? And that's kind of how like, even the country was founded on that, like innate human rights.
Oh, okay. So like virtuous.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
like
Uh,
where to just put it in terms that are kind of a little bit more clear in general. Where did the United States Constitution draw its fundamental human rights from? Like, where did those morals come from? Christianity. So, you know what I mean? Like, there's like a Muslim culture will have different morals and standards than a Christian culture versus a Buddha. Well, Buddhism, I would say, pretty much aligns with a lot of things, but point being is people can have different ideas of morals, and so his argument is that you really can't like more the word moral in there messes up that claim. And we went down a
actually,
crazy hole about that.
I think I'm going to challenge you because I'm looking at the definition here, and you know what? Actually, the consistency in what is helping to define moral is principles, and principles, those are moldable. Those are subjective to social, religious, political. All those are subjective to whatever environment of exposure it is in. But the actual word by itself, without any other flavors to it, is just right wrong. Principle around there is when that's when we change. That's when it mutates. And this is the stuff that we're talking about. Like this is when we like a true like when you say, do you have morals? Not principles of morals. Do you have morals? Do you have a wavering of good or bad?
Well, so it gets you're not quite there yet. It gets muddier than that. So
Oh god.
are there subsections, subcategories of principles that are better than others, that are more true than others, that sort of supersede time and space? And
Oh,
that's the actual question.
you just made my boobs hurt. I just went right back into the moral cave space. You jerk.
So,
Like that
so
just went right back in there. It was like, and principles just tucked its little tail right back into the moral cave.
yeah. So that's why it's a hard question. And you and I didn't
Concerned with the
pack
principle.
that portion of it yet. We got lost
Yeah.
in the second half, but somebody so that's why I said it's like the main fork in the road. Someone who truly believes that morals are subjective are going to have a hard time answering this question. And people who have the belief that morals are there are objectively true and better morals, they're on the objective side of the fork. This question is pretty straightforward to them. And that's the divide. And I not to get too in the weeds because we've been talking about this for like 10 minutes,
Yeah.
but
Sorry. Yeah, I know. But this is not. But just so our listeners know, this is exactly why we had a 3 hour conversation. Like,
yeah, this was
ew. Like, don't. This is like the monopoly of making an episode. We literally just could not buy Park Place. Okay, this is what we did
oh
for
yes,
3 hours.
we had to pay $2,000 fucking anyway.
I've been in jail so many times. Anyway, but yes, I think yes, to your point, this is the funny thing about it, and I think everybody has now seen, witnessed, and now listened to us literally talk the exact framework of this madness that can occur and that is occurring around this this fuckery, I guess, this vocabulary and vernacular and comprehension and connection around conversational styles, comprehensions that are I guess language. And I almost want to say the English language, and to it to effect. Now again, please,
Yeah.
a linguist. I mean, could you? I mean, we're not dying out here, but like we would just love to have you. So please, Brandon at smalltalk.com. Like smalltalkisLame.com. Just email me. Like,
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I actually wanted to talk about with this is the demeanor. Right? So even though this person I was talking with, so the funny part is I don't know if he actually believed what he was saying. I think he was saying what he thought was the popular thing, but I don't know whether he believed it or not. So that's neither here nor there. But the fact that he was basically taking the subjective viewpoint and I have an objective viewpoint, and I was playing devil's advocate. So whatever he said, I was sort of testing his knowledge, or not his knowledge, but his reasoning as far as how he got there, and trying to let you know what I mean. So there was a lot of back and forth, and it was all very good faith, even though it was opposites. We were able to have that conversation. We didn't get heated. And it was a truly like opposing view, like very fundamentally opposing. And we were chill. It was good. And we almost got to the meat of it, but then we had to go because we were errands and whatnot. But it was
There's
like I wanted
never any meat. There's never any meat in these conversations. I feel like
yeah, so we were just getting to the meat, and I was like, damn, we have to go. But yeah, when you can remain calm and actually get to the crux of what's going on and just have neutral dialogue, that's where the magic happens, and that's where you truly start to feel connected with people. And so I honestly think it's kind of sad when people get caught up in their emotions and they just have that sort of visceral reaction, or the like a knee-jerk sort of snappy. It shuts down everything. It really makes me sad. It's like, well, now I can't, like, we can't get into it because you're all emotionally riled up. Now it's like the discussion stopped, So I don't know. I think it's very important to be able to control yourself and have fun.
this also goes into everything that we talked about in this whole season. Was like, check in with yourself, please. Do not enter rooms in which you are not prepared to, I don't know, eat a bird speak, or try new food. Same thing with conversations. And that funny thing is like, yes, it's all about being open to exposures and things like that. But sometimes I feel like it is okay to sit and prepare, or also sit out. It's okay to be like, yeah, I can't weigh in on this subject, guys, because I don't know shit about it. And stand in that confidence, being like, look, I don't know, and that's okay, and I'm not going to sit here and facilitate knowing. We don't do it at work. I mean, some of us, and if we did do it at work, in our professions, there could be horrible ramifications. I think in the same proportion you said, okay.
I was gonna say, apply that thought real quick to, oh my god, words. Apply that logic real quick to like, let's just say an aerospace engineer. Someone walks in, they're like, yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years. Let me go build a space shuttle. See how good that's gonna go if you were working some other unrelated job. Like, what's the opposite of a, I don't know what the opposite of an aerospace engineer is, but I'm just gonna go with hairdresser because that seems from science. The first thing that came to mind. I'm not bashing on hairdressers, but we went from science to like beautiful art that I not everyone has the gifted talent to be able to cut hair, right? I understand that's its own little niche, and that's great.
That shit ain't easy.
Can you imagine?
They have to hold the hands weird and stuff, and then do all the weird stuff and hold the brush and stuff like that.
I'm just saying, if we applied that logic to our work environment, it would never hold water. So why do we do it in conversation? It doesn't make any sense.
I think to the same point, and this is why, and actually, this is probably why this is such a weird and difficult and very infinity going, always moving, always changing. It's a pulse. Like, this is a pulse around a purpose, a conversation, a thought process. Like, look, all these things, it's alive. I think it's also, there's too many things involved. Like, there's too much in the room with it. There's too many cooks in this comprehension. And I also feel like we have just muddied it up because guess what? We've either agreed to disagree last episode. We've also either have stopped at pivotal points to where nobody got to the meat. Nobody got to the meat. So they have carried all of these skins around as, the hardiness of what their conversations or viewpoints or frameworks are, and even their pathway to getting the real truth out of it. I still do believe that passion can be a problem or a prayer when it comes to people getting elevated in a certain conversation, because I know this. Sometimes when people get elevated or have passion, where it can come off a little like, "Whoa, your temperature just went up there, buddy. What's
Mhm.
wrong? This is my attempt was to have a dialogue, not a defect or a defense. I wasn't trying to do that. But the funny thing is too is it's like I think in the same note, know your audience and know the component. Like granted, I don't think you should have some of these conversations or even connections right off the bat without establishing some foundational understanding with the other person, because if they are not in a place where they can handle the functionality of these kind of conversations, don't put yourself in that environment because
Well, small objection to that.
yeah.
The way that you could kind of combat that, I think, and I've had to do this with work and other things. If especially in the Navy too, if I'm talking with somebody about something, anything, and it doesn't
Yeah.
even have to be as morally weighty as this. It could be something simple, and something I say sets them off, and I sense it. Like there's something, like they stop making eye contact, or their body language shifts. Maybe they haven't even said anything yet, or maybe the tone of their voice changes. If you pay attention, you can tell when you sort of have set somebody off, and it's not necessarily like the blame is on you, but don't ignore that cue. Like, why ignore it? You could say, "Hey, I noticed there is a shift in the tone of the conversation just now. I'm a little
Hmm.
at a loss here. Would you mind? Do you know what happened? Would you mind sharing?" Like that, you can always stop the topic and just address what happened in that moment. Because sometimes people don't even know that they do that. Like if
Yep.
you're, especially if it's a very like fundamental and buried kind of like core belief, and what you said sent off like a chain reaction that they're not even tracking, but all of a sudden now they're mad. It gives them time to sort of reflect without the conversation going on. Because I mean, how people's memories aren't that good. 30 seconds later in a conversation is hard to recount, even if there's only two of you. You know what I mean? So if you stop it dead in its tracks and be like, "Hey, I notice a shift," that allows the person to do some self-reflection, and maybe they can figure it out, maybe they don't know, but it still gives them the opportunity to be like, "You know what, I don't even know why I'm mad, but something you said just now pissed me off and I need to take a second." Like we can be adults and talk like that. People don't do that though.
Yeah. No, they do not. And the funny thing about it also too is that it's crazy to sometimes see how that that emotional response, that trigger, that whatever that button is, completely takes them out of the entire space of the conversation. You have
Yes.
left camp. You have completely left camp. And then I think also those energies, those residues, those remnants of that, whatever that was, will stay. Those are stains that now have really just stained the situation of whatever we need to kind of like solve or satisfy or even come together about. And I think that's probably the whole essence of what this whole episode was about and is about, is being like, look, when we hear certain keywords around a focus or a definition or clarity or comprehension, for crying out loud, um, why do we go to that place? And I think that's the thing. It's like maybe that's the reason why bigotry, racism, and prejudice have such nasty reactions, because of everyone's previous, past, present, and possibly even future emotional lack of response, regulation, and awareness, being like, wait, hold on. I need to make sure that even in this word that I've been maybe even systematically trained to feel that it's supposed to create a negative emotion or a defensive emotion or a shut down emotion. Instead of being like, wait, before I let my emotional barriers kind of take the wheel here, let me fully comprehend what is about to be said to me. And then after I've received it, and then put it through my own cognitive thought process of saying, okay, is this factual and this is evidence? Because then I can actually validate or even take myself through the route of your thought process.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the issue that I see, not even big communities, but just in like small groups or small discussions where there is one intellect in one person who has evidentially had evidence in fact, and then there's a bunch of sentencers. Like, I had a sentence, I had a Facebook post, I had a keyword. I just thought I'm disagreeing with everybody who's not agreeing with you. I feel like that also turns it into a nasty thing. It's like, why does everybody mad at the person who actually opened the encyclopedia?
Right? Yeah. Well, and then the actual sort of deterrent for that goes back to what we said in the beginning is critical thinking and actually taking it upon yourself to do the homework. And if you so choose, you could try to openly stay neutral until you think you've educated yourself enough to discuss this. And there's nothing wrong with it. We are so ignorant about we are ignorant about 90% of things in life, I think, until you
I mean, we'll have to
about
pull the numbers on that because that would be a sad universe.
Here's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
What's something that you see every day that you think you know about?
That's so an unfair question considering the conversation we're having right now. I can't answer that. Like, that's such a.
Time you see airplanes and helicopters flying around in the sky.
Considering my current location, I can't even think about the last time I've even heard one.
Oh, okay, but would you agree that's a pretty common experience? People see helicopters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How a helicopter gets off the ground? You know how it works?
No. Do I need to? See that.
That's the point, though.
And scene. I just did it, guys. That was so stupid. Oh, wow. And just like that, this is the psychological emotional response live of what happens when we think, like, do I really need to know what it does?
Exactly.
No.
Like, well, okay, so do you need to? No, but are you going to walk into a conversation with aerospace engineers talking about the most effective ways to build a helicopter? No.
I can't wait to be in a production team so somebody can just make me put like a sheep's face on my face right now because I'm like, because I literally just did the thing that we talked about. But Sierra, I also look at it this way. What the hell? Okay, I love this scenario because it was just super out there in bologna's. It was just bologna sandwiches for days. First of all, what the hell you mean that? Well, first of all, why am I going to be looking for helicopters and then go to an aerodynamic group meeting and be like, hey guys, I'm going to pretend like I know. I take that back. There was a time when I was younger in my 20s. I just aged myself. Either way, I had a group of friends. And there was always this one friend who I knew for a fact. I was like, bitch, you don't know what you're talking about. I heard you just picked the book up and read the first sentence and now you're an expert. Really?
That's
Really?
dangerous mindset.
And I'm in sales. I used to work in sales. And sometimes, you don't want to read the whole goddamn manual, but you get some keywords and you find some benefits and features and you kind of make it work. But I also knew the fundamentals and maybe even some of the principles around the overview and the objectivity of what the goal was for whatever they were looking for. But I didn't need to know how your pants were supposed to be made, dip dyed, and thread counted. I mean, I just knew I knew the core. So yeah, I don't walk into rooms like that. But yes, but I have also been caught with the pants down where it's like, nope.
Well, here's the core of that sort of line of thinking. I think the more complex the issue is, the more that you probably need to research before you should be comfortable putting
Which
out.
is why I say know the room. Pick a room. Pick the scene. Like that's when you go into the room for aerodynamic pilots because you did your homework.
Right.
But don't go in there with just like a flight magazine. Like I read Aviator this season. Don't do that.
Right.
That's stupid.
Here's
You're
the thing.
gonna look stupid.
You can walk in with a medium understanding of something. Just don't fake the confidence that you're an expert.
Did you just say medium?
Medium, yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. Sometimes I feel like we do get in these heavy conversations and there's no lightheartedness. So I'm bringing some lightheartedness to this because in the first season I was pretty goofy. But you just like medium. She just said it so eloquently. Like Schmedium, and we're talking about words, linguistic words, and you just bring in schmedium?
I think that's a fun word. I've made that word up. I don't, or not me,
Do
other people.
better. I'm just kidding. I'm
I
kidding.
like that word. I like
I'm
schmedium
kidding.
because
I
I'm
think
schmedium.
it's fun. Um,
I
not
think
in a fist fight. Not in a fist fight. She's more like a slarge. Like bam.
anyway. My whole point is like
Anyway,
if you bring a schmedium understanding to a topic, then just be open about the fact that this is how much you know, and you'd like to sort of walk the territory and understand more. But like, don't come in with false confidence of someone who's like an expert. Like that's an attitude shift. You know, I
you
think
you
it's
you know that made me think of this horrible or this funny. I've seen it in several skits and comedy things. It's like the one upper. Like I've been to Fiji too. I jumped off a mountain. I'd be like, shut up. Like,
yeah.
shh, it's not your turn. And actually, I don't remember buying a ticket to your show. Please go sit over there. Actually, you're an usher. Like, where's my seat? I'm not here for you.
Mhm.
So I feel like I think bottom line because we could beat this to the dead horse, and I feel like we've been going at this for quite the time. I think it's this. I think it's this, guys. You stillers out there who are out here trying to have be cool and stay cool and talk cool. Can y'all just actually pick up the book and make sure that you cross-reference the actual coolness that you're about to kind of conquer and communicate to people? Because enough is enough. And I am also in the same class that y'all about to be in because it's exhausting to perpetuate until you meet the person who's like, do you really know what you're talking about? Do
Yeah.
you?
I
It's
think
almost like to the very beginning of this comment of our whole thing. It's like, how are things going on within you? Do you know what you are talking about?
I was
It's kind of
literally
like that.
about halfway through the episode. I was like, "Oh my god, we started this podcast with that one, and here's the next one." That's so funny. So we were like on the same wavelength. That's cool. But yeah, so in case you guys hadn't figured it out yet, I think we do have a moral obligation to challenge people's bigoted beliefs, and that we are negligent if we do not. Brandon, where do you stand on that claim?
I think it's important to, yes, not, I don't want to say challenge. I think it's an opportunity for us to invite the dialogue required for the realistic outcome. Because if I let somebody stay in there stupid, at least when I know better, not okay, actually, hold on, let me take it back. Because that sounds very judgmental, and I don't want this to come off as
Oh,
judgmental. But if I'm in a situation where this is factual evidence or factual information, and I'm witnessing a person who is giving a very opinionated, subjective, not even close to the moon thought process, yes. No, because technically, I like for instance, like this in this case, the next time I'm in a conversation with someone who's arguing with me about like something about political or even within my own community LGBTQ, I'm gonna look at them and like, do you know? Do you? Do you know? Oh, you don't know. Well, here's the rub. And the funny thing is there was a time where sometimes those people who were like, ah, da, 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 I'm like, you don't know the history, cutie pie. Like,
mm-hmm.
get the facts. Take your funyuns and go get some facts because this ain't the rub. Especially when you're trying to hold me accountable or hold me to some flame of your fear or fierceness. I was like, if you don't take that glitter and go sit over there.
Well, it sounded like you kind of had an issue with the word challenged. And to me, when I heard your protest, it sounded like the word challenged held a negative connotation to it that
Because
I don't believe
people,
should be there. I think if you
um,
like
yeah,
if challenge is a neutral term, challenge meaning like if if this is their beliefs and this is a challenge, like I'm just poking the bear, it doesn't have to be negative. You know what I mean? It could just be a brush up. So
yes, but I love what you said.
the
It's still a bear
negativity
though.
it doesn't have to be.
It, it's still a bear though, Sierra. I don't want to poke it, let alone talk to it. It's a bear. So I was like, hey
That's
guys, let's go talk to the koalas over here because that's a bear. We don't poke bears.
well, but you know what?
I'm just, Yeah, I know what you're saying. But I also think it's important being like, if I'm going to go into this conversation with the mutual understanding that it is going to be a dialogue, not a defense, the last thing I want to do is go in there with this ability where there's an offensive defense of what my intent is.
Okay, so I mean, that's fair. I guess in my head, the word challenge doesn't have to be inherently combative or inherently sort of, there doesn't have to
And
be a
that's
like, you know
and
what I
to us, and to us, absolutely. But I think to the stranger that I'm going to sit there and listen to and say, "You're saying this wrong. Do you know what you're talking about?" I'm not going to challenge them because I already know, and this is just societal. I can already tell that people, when they are challenged, when they feel like they are on a place of purpose and perception, and you come in with the 1-2 punch of being like, "Oh, well, almost," but and you know that there's enough of your background of education and evidence around it to say, this is, yes, your support is about to deflate, and I don't want you to feel lost, but I do want you to feel saved in your own thought process. I don't want you to feel stupid or sunk in the fact that you are not correct.
So then I guess, well, I would put it to the viewers because let's let multiple minds work on one problem. Give
Yeah.
it answer. What word would you substitute for if unchallenged or challenged is a little bit too loaded with a negative or bias? What word
Mm-hmm.
would you substitute to put into that claim? I'll read it one more time. From a moral standpoint, is it negligent to allow someone to remain unchallenged in their bigoted beliefs? What word, let's put it to the viewers, what word would you substitute there to make the entire claim more neutral? With the understanding that when I say unchallenged, I just mean confronted with their own logic to see if they think it's true when they're presented with things that are the contrary. You know, like how do we, what word would go there? That'd be an interesting challenge for the
Okay,
viewer.
so I guess okay, so maybe because the thing is in this is where this again it can be subjective. But I would say, from a moral standpoint, is it negligent to allow someone to remain unclear in their bigoted beliefs? Because if I'm amongst them, if I'm of witness to this behavior, I am now recognizing that they are unclear. They do not have a sense of clarity and conciseness around the truth about what they're saying. They are unclear. They are now fogged in their own, fragrance of the understanding.
Unclear.
They're not.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
because if the end result is to say we now both will come to a place of understanding and even a different form of comprehension, then that's the intent. Because if we're not here trying to make a bunch of bullies, then great. I think it starts in even our attempt to say, I'm happy to go on this conversational journey with you, but I'm not going to sit here and make it a challenge because that's not the intent of what we all want to do. We want to connect, not challenge.
Well, so Brandon votes unclear. I'm not
I
sold
don't.
on that one. I
Well,
um,
Sierra also is there, but but you took the time and you have a lot more of a literature legacy in your back pocket. People ain't out here walking around with that kind of chutzpah.
well, I'm just saying, I'm gonna put it out to the viewers. So
Yeah,
Brandon
I
votes
say yeah.
unclear. I vote unchallenged. Someone else drop it in the comments. Make a
In the
Facebook tag us.
hashtag Brandon Clear, hashtag Sierra challenge, or maybe a fist emoji for Sierra and a peace emoji for me. I don't know. Either way, I think this is fun. I mean, either way, I think it's time for us all to just get our butts together and start saving ourselves as we start communicating more and conversating more. Get 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 some conscious comprehension behind you, some critical thinking. Take on some critical challenges to be more a better conversationalist, a better communicator, a better connector to your friends, families, and loved ones, and even strangers. Because I feel like this is also the other call for us all to start correcting certain criteria of connection. Because some of these people are out here now connecting on some really crazy banana juice. That's my name to say, because it's cool banana cakes. So that's all I got. I mean, I feel like this episode was really intense as far as like we started from the history and the definitions around the written word and how the written word has power when it's used with your voice, and how that has been poisoned with purpose and placement and perceptions, into now the framework that is how we now facilitate in our day-to-day social constructs and connections and criteria to say, I don't want to hang with you. I think it's crazy. Cuckoo banana kicks. So to all my still family here, guys, just do your best now. Say, challenge yourself. I did. I mean, hell, I looked up like 7 words in this last episode, so it's not uncool. I mean, but yeah. Mm-hmm. But until next time, follow us on all of your favorite social streaming services: Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. We are there, and we are on Reddit, but we are very, very busy people and super lazy. I'm lazy. So we will get there. We will get there. We will love it. But send us a shout out. We're on Instagram and Facebook, Still Podcast, or just look up Small Talk is Land. You'll see our beautiful logo. And I am Brandon.
And I'm Sierra.
And we will see you next time. And we have no idea what we're talking about next week, do we?
Yep, we're gonna figure it out.
We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna teach you guys a little bit. Actually, we have a teaser video. We actually have a special video coming. That's what we're gonna do. We have a special video about a topic that Sierra has been very passionate about, and I think it's important for, after this conversation, for it to be heard, and it to be heard because there is another voice out there that is kind of advocating for this type of dialogue, but I think Sierra has a much, much more vibrant and balanced view and voice around it. And I think it's important that we kind of make sure there's balance around these kinds of topics that we're going to talk about. So stay tuned for that, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.